There's a few guys that you watch and you're just like, man, that guy is so different.
What about Aaron Donald?
So Aaron, luckily I do not have to block him one-on-one that often. Like he's usually outside rushing a guard, but same thing. The level of quickness, I always think for defensive linemen, the best defensive linemen out there are guys that have speed and power. If you only have speed, there's things you can do to kind of, guard against that.
Yeah.
If you're a finesse player, you can go with a little bit wider hands when you punch, and you can bait him into certain areas, right? To like push him where he needs to go. And I think AD has all of it. He's just relentless. He's like a bulldog down there that just is mad and angry. You're like, man, we're just playing football. Why are you mad at me? I'm just trying to do my job.
Does he talk?
Hey, Kel, stop coming over. Stop. What are you helping the guard for? I'm like, you think I'm going to leave you one-on-one? You're the best player in the NFL. I'm going to slide to you every time. Like, what are you? We're not just going to let you ruin the game, Aaron.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah, that was Travis Kelce, New Heights Podcast, Center for the Philadelphia Eagles. We are here to talk about our rivals, the Rams from Los Angeles, and I fucking hate that team. Welcome to First Kick Seahawks, the show where we prepare you for the first kick of every game by game day. Sorry, the first kick of every play by game day. I'm not prepared today. I'm irritated because last night I recorded a show with this camera. The camera was supposed to improve the quality of the show, it's supposed to make it a little sharper, and it hosed. It hosed the entire show. I didn't have any problems with it when I recorded the update of the show, which I was doing just to let everyone know how the channel's doing. And would you know, last night at like 5 minutes into the 40-minute stream, it just stopped working. And I didn't know that, right? Because I was too busy researching and showing you everything I researched. So this is going to be a lot better. Fingers crossed. If something's going to go wrong, it might just go wrong. But you roll with the punches. And that is something that we have had to do with the Los Angeles Rams. I mean, Jeff Fisher used to fucking hound us, right? He'd find weirdest ways to win. But ever since Sean McVay got into the league as a head coach, he has just butt-fucked us. And that's not fun. So as we jump into this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. We're going to talk about how we need to take the Rams serious again in 2024. There was that year where after they won the Super Bowl, like 80% of their team broke, and their offensive line was the busiest roster ever, meaning that they have had more formations and groups of guys play offensive line in a season than any other team, right? They were injury ridden, and people thought they were done with. And then they won 10 games last year. And then this year, the offseason conversation is, well, they don't have Aaron Donald. Their defense is going to suck because they don't have the greatest defensive player probably of all time. And they're probably going to get 10 to 12 wins this year. So we're going to talk about that and why we should take them seriously. I'm also going to compare them a little bit to the Seahawks so you can get an idea of what we're looking at, because it's very unlikely that you watch every single snap that they have. But as we get started, I want to point something out to you. It's this one. So this is credit to Adam Pfeifer, whatever. Senior NFL NBA analyst for FTN Fantasy, Bills Mafia member. He found that during the weeks that Matthew Stafford, Kyren Williams, Cooper Kupp, and Puka Nacua were all healthy, the Rams posted a 24.2% offensive DVOA. And that would be second in the NFL, meaning that they were right behind the Ravens in their offensive explosiveness. And that makes a lot of sense because when they played us, they kicked our fucking ass. It helped that we had like the 28th worst defense in the league, and we're going to get to that as well. But the Rams averaged 28.5 points per game in those contests and scored 30 plus in more than half of those games, which was 8. And that's terrifying. How terrifying was this? Well, here is the EPA for players that had more than 15% of their target share. This is courtesy of me. You can follow me at pros_edda. So all the way over here is DK Metcalf. And I know it's hard to see. Can I zoom in? There. That'll at least center it. It's not helping. But DK Metcalf right here is like the 9th highest EPA per target. And again, this is for players that only had more than 50% of the target share. So there's some players that had a higher EPA than him but didn't get a lot of targets. He's right by Travis Kelce, who had more targets, right? This is the percent of targets share for the entire team. And so, like, Tyler Lockett would probably be in this area. He's right there. And then JSN is somewhere in there. The tight ends and the running backs are somewhere in here too. All of that is the reason why DK's target share was so low. And if you look at Brandon Ayuk, he's up here, right? He's almost average for the percentage target share, but he's a top 4 player when it comes to total EPA when targeted. But if you look at Puka Nacua, he had the 4th highest target share out of anyone in the league, behind Stephon Diggs, who's now with the Texans, Tyreek Hill, who's way up there, right? He leads the league in EPA. And if it wasn't for Jamar Chase getting the highest amount of target share for the Bengals, because other than like Joe Mix, that's all they had, he probably would be considered the highest target share next to Diggs and Puka. But Puka is up there with 4 absolute goddamn dogs. And what's common with these 4 guys? Well, you have Tua throwing to Tyreek Hill. You had Josh Allen. You had Matthew Stafford for most of the Puka Nacua games. And then Jamar Chase, again, he's just their only guy, right? They're just feeding him the ball. I don't know if that's because he's really good or if it's just a good scheme thing. St. Brown, of course, is just below DK and Kelce, and then Tyler Lockett is dropping off a bit. I also want to point out that Tutu Atwell of the Rams is right down here. He also had more targets than DK Metcalf as far as the percentage goes. And there is no Cooper Kupp on this list, right? There's no Cooper Kupp. There's no Tyler Higbee. I call him Tyler Bad Knee. Puka Nacua was that dude last year. On top of that, we have the passing and rushing efficiencies last year without the playoffs, of course. And the Rams were higher than us on the drop back, and then also just a teeny bit lower than us on rushing. But we had our running backs last year, and this is basically the Kyren Williams stat, where he was one of the better running backs in the league last year, but he only played a few games. I'd say almost half of them, and we're going to get into that as well. But you have to be wary of the fact that the Rams were severely injured last year, and they still put up really good numbers, both in their passing and rushing efficiency, and then also just when their number 1 target was getting targeted, he was one of the better players in the league, right? Chase, Diggs, Adams, Allen, Brown, St. Brown, Godwin, Kelce, Metcalf, Lamb, Nico Collins, Ayuk, Moore, and Hill were the only guys, which is quite a list, who were better at him in EPA. He's right up there with the Justin Jeffersons of the world. So if he improves this year, because Cooper Kupp is actually on the field pulling threat off of him, we could see Puka Nacua have a big season. A ridiculously big season. And 2 years ago, when the Rams didn't have all of their players, They had the 27th DVOA for offense. Overall, right? And then last year they had 17th overall DVOA in the league. But that was because their special teams was so historically bad. In fact, the Rams finished with a special teams DVOA of negative 9.8%, which is the 6th worst special teams grade ever measured. And so if this was even just average, they easily could have had a top 10 DVOA last year. If they were all healthy, they easily could have had a top 5 DVOA last year, considering that they would have had the second best DVOA for offense on the entire season. I also want to show you their defense as far as EPA goes. Now, Seahawks are all the way the fuck down here, right? This is the why Pete Carroll got fired defense. You also have the Eagles, who had all that talent, but they had lost Jonathan Gallen to the Cardinals, right, who are also down here with the bad defense. But we had no excuse, right? We had Diggs, we had Julian Love, Bobby Wagner, we had Mafe and Williams and Reed, and we had Jones on that defensive line, right? Fucking Witherspoon was up for a Rookie of the Year. And then also Woolen just fell off the fucking map. At least we're not the Cardinals, right? But our rushing defense was terrible. The Rams, dead average. Dead average with Aaron Donald. And granted, Aaron Donald wasn't being a powerhouse that he has known to be. He was still taking on about 3 blockers at a time, but it was the rest of the guys around him that were eating. So the Rams can get better, is my point. And the conversation for defense starts with Byron Young. Byron Young is their outside linebacker. I believe he replaced Fowler, who was for the longest time on the Jacksonville Jaguars before finally going to the Rams. And this was just his rookie season. And in his rookie season, he had 1 fumble recovery, 2 forced fumbles, and 8 sacks. He also had 41 solo tackles and 19 quarterback hits. Yeah, he was 8th place in Defensive Rookie of the Year. And he probably should have been higher, except everyone thought the Rams were bad last year, which they were not. They won more games than the fucking Seahawks did. They trounced us twice. Let's see, his pass coverage, his yards per target are 4.5. He's only allowing 5.8 on a completion. And quarterbacks, when they target him, had an 84.4 grade. He also hurried the quarterback 10 times, which, I mean, it depends on how many defensive snaps he had, which we can go to. He had 969. Nice. So 959 of those, he wasn't hurrying the quarterback, but he also did hit the quarterback 19 times and knocked the quarterback down 11 times, where this is you hit the quarterback after they've already thrown the ball. So what's so scary about this guy is he's just getting started. Now, granted, he could drop off a bit because he doesn't have Aaron Donald next to him taking up as many blockers, but he's a lot like Boye Mafe, right? 6'4", 261 pounds. And then when you look at Young, he's 6'2", 250 pounds, so he's a little bit meatier, a little bit heavier. But Boye Mafe last year, he had 9 sacks, right? 1 forced fumble, 2 fumble recoveries, and then 35 solo tackles. So he also had 16 quarterback hits, 9 tackles for loss. And we're all expecting him to take a gigantic jump. Now, granted, he's playing next to Reed, Williams, and Jones, who are damn good defensive tackles and defensive ends. and it allowed him to be open with a lot of one-on-one situations. He also got most of these sacks versus the Giants. But when we look at his pass coverage, yards per target, he's getting targeted deep, 13.9 yards. And then on completion, 18.5. So he's allowing a 156.2 rating, and we expect him to be great and to take a gigantic jump. I did it again, right? He might take a gigantic dump, because if teams figure out, hey, we can just target this guy in pass coverage, he might be screwed. He hurried the quarterback 8 times, knocked them down 8 times. And I just really wish that he could fix this. It could be a scheme thing, right? He's supposed to take that right up the corner, but it's not necessarily likely that he's going to improve, because the previous year he also allowed 122.8, right? He's not targeted a lot. 8 targets compared to 6 completions. But when you look at Byron Murphy, he was targeted 17 and allowed 13 completions, and he kept all of this really low, right? The scheme was put in a situation to get Byron to succeed. So if you're talking about, well, they don't have Aaron Donald, well, first of all, Aaron Donald doesn't do pass coverage, right? If we're trying to do a swing out to Kenneth Walker, who I think is going to have a good season, or we're trying to do a screen, Byron Young is going to eat that shit alive. But if Kyren Williams, who we're going to talk about in a second, is suddenly doing a swing against Boye Mafe, he is going to destroy Mafe, right? He's going to get like 18 or more yards on that pass attempt. And this goes to the point of how Sean McVay runs his offense. I can't stand it because it's really smart. It's really, really smart. He knows exactly what is allowed in the NFL and what is not allowed in the NFL. Particularly if you hit my guy like Wes Welker, Cam Chancellor rolling down the hill in the Super Bowl, they're just going to throw a flag. And in this season where there's no hip drop tackle allowed, he's just going to allow Puka to do what he did last year, which are all these little underneath routes and then going and getting a bunch of yards after the catch, right? Where guys are trying to trail him, grab him, and then pull him down to the ground. And so he wants to put his players in situations where in the 2000s, just the 2000s, right? These guys would have been fucking lit up and wouldn't have had a chance. Tyler Higbee, Kupp and such, they line up in the slot or even in the backfield, and then they just run straight up the seam, knowing that no one's allowed to hit them. Knowing that if they run across the field on a dig route or a drag route and they catch the ball, no one's allowed to hit them. You have to run step by step with them, wrap them up, and drag them down, and that's how you go from a 13.9 yards per target to getting that extra 5 yards, turning it into 18, because you have an angle advantage and an opportunity to drag the defender. So he plays really smart. He also, in the backfield, is constantly lining up Kupp and Nacua in particular to block the vision of the defense. They can't see the quarterback. They don't know the rhythm of his feet. You have to go based off of tape and intuition. And it gives him Matthew Stafford, plenty of opportunities to make adjustments on the fly and throw to the checks. I hate it because it's smart football, which would not be allowed to happen if the NFL hadn't kept making rules to make offenses more explosive. Drives me nuts. But you have to be wary of that. Because when you look at Puka Nacua, here's his rookie year. Look at his yards per target. 9.3. Really fucking good. That's elite right there. Just having somebody target you at 9.2. Sorry, 9.3. But he's averaging 87.4 yards a game. He has a low catch percentage of 65.6. And if you remember some of those games, he was getting targeted like 18 times. It was absurd. Yards per reception, 14.2. Which means, on average, when he's targeted at 9 yards, he gains an extra 5 yards on top. And that's just like Boye Mafe, where he's being targeted at 13.9, and then he's giving up an extra 5 on top. It's all this drag stuff. It gives him opportunities to just move across the field. Puka Nacua, of course, also just super explosive, as we saw earlier. And if we compare him to DK Metcalf, which this is always sad to look at, DK Metcalf last year, he had a 55.5 catch percentage, 9.4 yards per target, which is about the same. But if we look at his yards per reception, 16.9. Right, when he catches the ball, he fucking takes off. It is absurd. 8 touchdowns. Puka Nacua last year had 6 touchdowns. And a lot of that was because he was just the chain mover. And again, as we established with the EPA charts, Puka Nacua is getting the vast majority of those targets. And DK Metcalf's getting fucking nothing in comparison. You know, he's being treated as the Rams' third string receiver, Tutu Atwell. Imagine if DK had as many target shares as Puka Nacua with that gigantic yards after the catch. He would easily be the number 1 wide receiver in the NFL. He's just not targeted. Puka also had 1486 yards. DK Metcalf with 1114. But again, just far more explosive when he gets the ball in his hands. And it's a completely different type of scheme. So Puka moves around, right? He's the slot receiver. DK Metcalf is a pure wideout. And generally when you're looking at a quarterback's progression, they're looking at the flanker, then they're looking at the seam, or the slot if the slot's on the right side, or they're looking at the slot on the left, and then the wideout. The wideout's job is to pull the free safety over to the blind side so it opens up the vision of the visible side for the quarterback. And so that guy for them was a Tyler Higbee, right? Was a Tutu Atwell. And it had all this little stuff opening up underneath for Puka Nacua and Kupp. Cooper, who also would just run straight up down the seam. So DK Metcalf in this Ryan Grubb offense, I'm not sure how he's going to be used. Because I understood the philosophy of having DK Metcalf run posts or run corner routes or curls, right, from the wideout spot, because he is so fucking explosive when he gets the ball in his hands that you have to two-team him. You have to put a corner underneath and a safety over the top, because otherwise he will burn you to death. But by doing that, it opens up things for Tyler Lockett and JSN and the tight ends, Noah Fant, right? But it's a completely old school way of using the wideout. And I've always kind of said, man, we should be playing DK Metcalf either on a seam, like a tight end, right? Just run that fucking seam, which also will split the safeties, right? You can still fuck with the safeties on the seam, or put him at flanker so that he can be the first read. Let him get more targets, and if he beats the guy, just fucking give it to him. If he beats the guy again, just fucking give it to him, right? That's how Puka Nacua ends up getting so many snaps, is he's put in such an advantageous position that nobody, why would you throw it to anyone else, right? Jamar Chase is the same thing. If he is the guy who is your first read and he's always getting open, why would you throw it to anyone else but Jamar Chase? DK Metcalf, last read, right? Like eventually he'll get open and it'll be a big catch. But the quarterback's not going to typically reach step 7 or step 9. And he's probably trained, get the ball out as quickly as you can so we can move the chains. I would like DK to be used a bit more like Puka. Get him the ball as quickly as you can and let him rumble, right? Puka can't rumble, and I've complained about this in the past, that when somebody is coming after him defensively, they just they can't fucking rock his world, right? There's a bunch of plays, especially against us, where if it was some other player, some other era, he would have been just destroyed. and he's not, right? He ends up getting a bunch of extra yards where normally he would be done. But DK Metcalf, of course, doesn't have the advantage of Puka Nacua. It seems to be that the larger the player is, the more the refs are going to allow you to get popped. And he's the biggest wide receiver that there has ever been. Puka Nacua, on the other hand, he's built like me. Like, he's a little bit stronger, right? Obviously faster and more athletic. But he ain't nothing special physically, right? He's just put in really good situations. And so if we're going to talk about how the Rams are going to improve this year, it's going to be they're just going to be healthy. And not only that, they replaced their tight end with somebody who's way better than Tyler Higbee. I call him Tyler Badney. When Badney had his knee blown out in the playoffs versus Detroit, right, he jumps up in the air like an idiot, and then the defender ends up hitting him in the knee when he was trying to go for the torso, but because the dumbass decided to jump, hit him in the knee. That's what you fucking get, dude. So they replaced him until he gets healthy, right, with Cody Parkinson of Seahawks fame, who I am so upset that we let go because he is long, he is athletic, and he has finally learned how to block. He was a damn good blocker for us last year, and it's part of the reasons why he didn't get as many targets, because we had our tackles missing. So when you include the fact that Puka's always getting put in advantageous positions, Cody Parkinson can line up at flanker, at wideout, and then run those seams to pull the safety off, and you have Cooper Kupp, that's dangerous. But it gets worse. It gets so much worse than that. Here we have Kyren Williams, who I honestly thought it was his rookie season. Last year, it was actually his sophomore season. He didn't start any games his rookie season, but last year, he started 11 out of 12. And in those 11 games, he had 1,144 yards rushing. If you remember, we just looked at DK. He had 1,114 yards receiving. Okay, 66 receptions. Kyren, 228 attempts. Dangerous. 95.3 yards per game. 5 yards an attempt. Explosive. 5 is elite. He also had 48 targets, which again compared to DK Metcalf, who had 66. He had 206 yards with the 6.4 yards per reception, but it's a different game. 3 receiving touchdowns and then a 66.7 catch rate. The biggest thing is this yards per target is low. But if he's going up against Boye Mafe, because he's swinging out, there's a pretty damn good chance that he's going to get a lot of yak. At least 5 yards of yak. Unless Boye Mafe suddenly just becomes a much different player. He was also all-pro rank 2 for running back and went to the Pro Bowl. And so if he's fully healthy, Cooper Kupp is fully healthy, Parkinson is what he is expected to be, which is an upgrade over bad knee, and then you got Puka Nacua, there is no reason why the Rams can't have the second-ranked or the first-ranked DVOA in the league again. They just got to stay healthy. And that's a lot, right? Because Matthew Stafford, he's been known to have some injuries, but then he comes back and just fucking kicks ass. And it wouldn't be the first time that the Rams have lost their starting quarterback and then had a backup ready to take over. So who is the Rams' backup at quarterback? It's Jimmy Garoppolo. He's suspended right now, but he's expected to come into the season. So you have a Super Bowl, say what you want to say, right? You have a Super Bowl caliber quarterback who won one, and then a Super Bowl caliber quarterback who lost one, and he just needs a lot of talent around him. So you got plenty of talent for Jimmy Garoppolo, and then probably Stetson Bennett, right, will be waiting. I also want to point out that the backup of Kyren Williams is Blake Corum, who set it was at least the rushing record for Michigan. He might have also set the touchdown record at Michigan last year. He was the guy that made J.J. McCarthy look really fucking good, right? Blake Corum is that dude. This is the equivalent of a Kenneth Walker, right? But they got him in like the 7th round, free agency, something like that. Wide receiver, of course, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Demarcus Robinson, and then there's Tutu Atwell at receiver 4. But any of these guys, you know, they could be the next Cooper Kupp purely because of the way that Sean McVay schemes his guys open. But you can't get open if you don't have a good offensive line. I want to talk about a few of these guys. First of all, Rob Havenstein. He's been a damn good tackle for a long time. He actually is replacing Joe Noteboom, who let's find him. He is the 25th most expensive tackle in the NFL this year at $13.33 million, and he's their backup. This is not the first time that I've talked about how on the offensive line, you don't have 5 starters. You have 8 starters. And the reason you have 8 starters is because it is highly likely that most of your offensive linemen aren't going to play the full season, especially as they moved on to 18 games. And if you make it to the playoffs, right, that's even more reps. So what happened to the Rams 2 years ago? Well, they lost all of their offensive linemen. And then the backups came in and they lost a bunch of those. And they kept having to move them around. So to combat that, they extended Joseph Noteboom to make sure that if Rob goes down or if Dotson goes down, he can play on the right side. I think he can also play left tackle for Alaric Jackson. But it gets worse. It gets way worse. I had all these set ahead of time, but life comes at you quick. Here we go. Last year, the Rams were 11th in the offensive line ranking. Their starting lineup is Alaric Jackson, Jonah Jackson, Steve Avila, Kevin Dotson, and then Rob Havenstein. This is all good for Matthew Stafford to complete his 7-step process and to give his guys time to get into advantageous situations, right? If you play Madden, right, you want to catch the ball and then immediately rip up the field. That's what their whole offensive is. They also gave Jackson, who I believe is Jonah Jackson, the left tackle, $51 million over 3 yards to play left guard. That's right. And then Avila is moving to center after he played left guard last year. Jackson, of course, used to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Oh, sorry, Dotson was acquired from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he's at right guard. So they've completely rebuilt their offensive line. And if you look, like Jonah Jackson, Avila, Dotson, and Rob Havenstein by themselves is a damn good unit. I don't know about Alaric Jackson, but then you add in Joe Noteboom, and they're stacked, right? If any of these guys go down, they have so much versatility. Steve can rotate out to left guard, right? Maybe even Kevin can do that, and you can bring in Logan Bruss or Mike McAllister. They have a lot of just good pieces so that their offense doesn't fall apart again. But it gets worse. It gets worse for the Seahawks for sure. Who is the highest paid guard in the NFL? Well, let me show you. Jonah Jackson, tied for 6th. Again, they're prioritizing Matthew Stafford's interior pocket this season. If you're going to be going up against a Leonard Williams and a Reed and a Byron Murphy, you're going to need to make sure that the center isn't blown up. I've talked many times about how, here's an example, Leslie Frazier. I disagree with him on this. He says you build defenses front to back, defensive line, and then you build the backfield. I disagree. You build defenses center right from the quarterback's point of view, right? Your nose tackle, your middle linebacker, and then your high safety, whether that's the free safety or the strong safety, it's your high safety. And then you take out the right side, because unless you're going up against a Tua, their blind side's going to be on the left. You can put guys on the left side that will just know to be in the right position. Just make sure they tackle, because that's where all the swing plays typically go. They clear space out, and then that's where the checks are. But if you can take out the center and make sure that they're forced to play either one side of the field or the other, your defense should be really fucking good. And the Rams have made many great defenses by having not a lot of talent, but having a cornerback that can roam in Ramsey, and then Aaron Donald blowing up the middle. You just need to make the quarterback have to move from his spot and decide, am I going to the side of the field that I can see, or am I going to the side of the field on the left where I don't know what's going on yet? So you build center to the right, or center left if you're on the defensive side, right? So they got 3 really, really good offensive linemen playing on the interior. And then they have their right side invested. And then left side we'll fucking see. But this whole side of the field on the right, they're taken care of, so much so that they even have a backup who's the 25th highest paid tackle in the league, ready to go. But it gets worse, because they were just the 11th last year. What if Steve Avila, who is playing left guard, ends up being a great center? What if Alaric Jackson takes a jump, and then Jonah Jackson, Kevin Dotson, and Havenstein play the way that they're expected to play? Matthew Stafford is going to eat us a fucking live. It's painful. And just to home this point in one more time, we're going to Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker last year, 219 attempts, 905 yards, 8 touchdowns. Kyren Williams, 228 attempts, 1,144 yards, and 12 touchdowns. And he was only in for 11 games. Kenneth played the full fucking season. Oh, 15 games. He missed 3. Receiving 29 receptions, 259, 8.9 yards per reception. I say that he's going to have a breakout season this year as a receiving back, the next Austin Eckler. You know who else could be the next Austin Eckler? Probably not Kyrie Williams, who has 6.4 yards per reception last year, only 206 yards. So we have that advantage. But he's averaging 95.3 yards per game on the ground, where Kenneth only has 60.3 yards on the ground, right? He's a big explosive player. In the Ryan Grubb offense, I fully expect for him to get a lot of screens. A stupid amount of screens, getting him into space. He's got that 8.9 yards per reception. I'm betting, and I'm not a betting girl, right, that Kenneth is probably going to have 10 yards per reception this next year. He's going to be an Alvin Kamara type guy. Exciting shit in my mind. But again, all of this is to say, we really need to respect the Rams, because I'm tired of it. I'm tired of this. Oh, well, they lost their best player, Aaron Donald. They're not going to be shit. Oh, what about 2 years ago when they didn't have Aaron Donald because he was injured the whole year after winning the Super Bowl? And they still kicked our ass. Oh, well, their offense is capped out because Matthew Stafford is getting old. It doesn't matter if Matthew Stafford is starting. It doesn't even matter if Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be starting, because everything else going on around them is stacked. It's damn stacked. And it's put in such a situation where their quarterback doesn't need to do anything. This is the thing that was so bad about Waldron, was he required a quarterback to play well for his scheme to work. He had DK and JSN and Lockett and Noah and Disley and Parkinson. But as soon as he lost his tackles, it all fell apart. Not only did it fall apart, the quarterback started to get really rushed. And we have one of, if not the most accurate quarterback in the league. Matthew Stafford's somewhere in the middle of the road, right? But it doesn't matter, because he's put in a situation where he can just dump the ball off over and over again. If he misses, fuck it, we'll just do it again. Very advantageous situations. He doesn't need to rely on Tyler Lockett running an out route and timing it perfectly. He just needs to dump it off and then let the guy stretch the field. So take the Rams seriously. I don't want to hear in week hey, we're going into the Rams stadium. They've lost Stafford and they've lost Cooper Kupp. And then they lost Byron Young. We got this. And then watch once again as even our own players don't take them seriously. You know how we lost that second game last year, other than Geno Smith getting his arm blown up? It was because we never put that team away. Put the Rams away before they kick your ass. It's not the forward stats, right? Oh, they're 17th in total DVOA. Well, it's because their special teams sucked. What if they fix their special teams this year and everyone is healthy? That's the number one offense in the NFL. No question, the number one offense in the NFL. Because the Chiefs don't have all that talent. They got Patrick Mahomes. The Ravens just lost a bunch of talent, right? They should be the number one DVOA, which they were last year. But the Rams are right there. The Rams are right there. So take them seriously. Please, for the love of the football gods, take them seriously. Because I am tired of being like, well, here we go again. Every Seahawk fan is saying we're going to kick their ass. And then we get our ass kicked. Anyways, Thank you for being here at First Kick Seahawks. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. We're going to also get to the Cardinals. We're going to get to the 49ers. And then we're going to break down our preseason ventures against the Titans as we prepare for week 1. I also want to do more of an evaluation on Leslie Frazier and what he's bringing to the team. And I'm excited for this season. There is no reason for us to be bad unless we don't take our competition seriously, in which case nothing will change. I will see you guys around next time.